Okay, today what we're going to do is we're going to pretty much pick up where we left off last time with this. What I hope to get through today is I'd like to get through refining some of the faces, and so I'm going to walk you through how to do that and introduce you to the some of the different tools in your toolbox. Okay, we've used the brush tool a little bit. We use the pencil tool more, uh, but there's a lot of you know different variations on these brushes that you can use, and the mixer brush here in particular is really quite handy. Okay, so let's get on to this. Now, you may have noticed since the last video, I decided to switch up the background a little bit. I wasn't really happy with the trees that were showing up, so I replaced it with this, which is a little more subtle. Used the same process as I did the first time. Created a brush out of a graphic. It was, I believe, this one right here. Okay, made a brush out of that, so it was a little more subtle. Just take part of it at a 1,000 by 1,000 pixel square and make that into a brush. Actually, I should close these out because I don't need them anymore. Okay, so there's my basic background right there. You'll also notice that I put in a little bit of a lighter foreground. Okay, that was just by using a really big brush, really soft brush. Okay, that'll allow me to put some cast shadows in there, and will give the figures a solid ground to be standing on. I'm going to turn the visibility back onto this stuff so you can see what we're doing here. Now, something else I did while the camera was off is I went through and got some color samples and saved these to my palettes right across here to my palette, my main swatches palette here. You can see along the top, these are the most recent ones that I've selected. Okay, so what we've got here, and this is something that's good to know. If you scroll over your custom colors, they'll tell you what they are. So I have the 3 basic skin tones for the mummy character, a couple of ones for the high priest, who's got kind of a goldish skin tone, and then I've got, yeah, there's actually 3 there because I got the color with the shadows as well, and then some basic flesh tones across here, which should be useful for doing the more regular characters. Okay, so I may have to, when I'm painting, I may have to click off the guides. The guides are kind of nice to have, but to be honest, the brush tends to zip right to them, which can be kind of irritating sometimes. So there's that. All right, so let's go back here to our regular paintbrush here. We want to make sure that everything is all set. Okay, I've got the pressure for opacity set. Okay, and I've got the pressure for size set. That's pretty important. One of the things that you want to be aware of, especially if you're doing digital inking, that sort of thing, is that you want to have a nice tapered line. With painting, it doesn't matter quite so much. Okay, I'm just going to be putting in some basic tones here. I think what I'll do is probably start off with the main character here. So let's make sure I'm on the right layer, Dr. Nocturnal layer. Otherwise, I'd be on a layer behind, and we don't want that. And first off, what I have to do is I have to put in some basic color. Right now, we just have this kind of orange tone. He's looking a little not great right now because there's not really anything there. It's just a colored blob. You take the pencils off, you get that. Okay, so we don't really want that. All right, so let's go ahead and there's our basic flesh tones here. I'm going to click on a more shadow flesh tone, and I'm going to get the mid flesh tone right there. And I'm going to switch back over. I was using a mouse to click on stuff. I'm going to switch back over and get my my brush tool and get ready to go here. Okay, so we're on the correct layer. We've got the right brush. Again, I'm just going to start putting in a little bit of a darker tone along here, maybe along here, and I'm just coloring in. Now the thing is with digital painting, and when you have your pencil sketch, showing what happens is sometimes you get you can't really see what you're doing that well. So every once in a while you have to pop the pencils off and kind of get an idea of what it is you're trying to do here. That's not too bad. Okay, let's get a little darker color in here, right along the edges. Now, one thing I want to let you know too is I'm probably going to get a good start here, show you how it's done, and then in order to keep this video from being some epic gladiator length, you know, kind of thing, I'll probably switch off for a bit and then pop back on when I have something to show. Digital painting is a fairly time-intensive process. It really is. So you know, you kind of have to be patient here with me. I'm gonna improve the hairline here as well. Let's make that just a little bit. A little bit smaller and actually a lot harder right through here. That was at 14.4. Okay, that'd be about good. All right, what I'm doing, actually, I'm gonna click off this for right now. The reason for that is I'm improving the hairline and refining what I have here. And what I had set up was up here it was the opacity by pressure. And while that's a good thing for a lot of painting, I don't want that on right now because I want it to show up. I need to slim up his face a little bit here. So what was happening was my strokes weren't showing up the way I wanted them to. So I had to click that off. I'll probably click it back on in a little bit. But you can see here my pencil lines that were denoting where his hair was. I'm going to have to go in with a little bit of highlights later on to define the shape of the beard here and separate that from the collar and things like that. But all that'll happen in good time. While I still have this dark here, I'm going to go ahead and pop in a little bit of an eye line along here, going with a dark first, because then I can go in with a little bit of lighter and refine that somewhat. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and I think I'll use this gray right here, bluish gray. That ought to work. And I'm just going to put in a little bit of tone right there, differentiate the eyes from the rest. Put a little color along here, just beneath the eye right there, and then maybe just maybe a little bit of a lighter tone. Let's say, let's see, that might be a little too light. Make that just a bit darker. Give a little bit of a tint to it. Something like that. Okay. So we got a little bit of differentiation and color there. I'm also probably going to need to go back in and make some other little minor adjustments here and there as well. Now, if I don't describe every action I'm making, don't worry about it. It's when you're doing artwork, you know, you have a lot of different sort of things you're thinking through or going through your head, and you just sort of start doing stuff without thinking about it. Now, he's got quite dark hair. I need to put in some highlights too, and I think I'm going to just kind of block some of those in right now. The thing is, with sort of a dark brownish hair like this is, it's not quite black. I should probably stick with another shade of brown, so a little more chestnutty or something like that, maybe. One thing I want to remember too is that when you have some color in there, or for the true highlights, I'm probably going to put in a little bit of purple or something like that, because it will reflect the surrounding color. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just click on one of these, you know, and just put in a little bit along here, and maybe a little along here. Something like that, maybe. Along here, and not too much over here, because or something like that, maybe. Might give them a little bit of a um, rim highlight at some point. Don't want to do too much in there. The other kind of highlights I was talking about would be like for the really, you know, like highlight areas, like right along the edges, where you don't want to use white, but you want to use something that kind of reflects the color that's going on here, the basic color palette. Oh, and speaking of the basic color palette, what I have sort of based this on, this Dr. Nocturnal thing, what I've sort of based this on are, I guess you'd call them gothic horror novels of the 1960s and 70s. I've been looking at a lot of those. There's a whole subgenre in paperback illustration called women fleeing houses. It's always some dark wooded scene in the middle of the night, and there's always a woman running away from a big gothic mansion. I was really amused to find a lot of that stuff, and so I'm having a little bit of fun with this sort of thing, using that same sort of color palette, where there's a lot of purples and oranges and all of that. I think one thing I might need to do is let's take a look at. Yeah, that's coming along pretty well. It's not too bad. I don't have any real distinctive features in yet, and I still need to do a lot of blending, but you can kind of see the way that it's going. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in a few highlights here. I always like to put in some. Let's reference our. There's a little bit, you know. This is our fun little action figure here that I tossed together. Okay, like I said in the previous video, I have to put these guys together to sometimes to get a feel for the a pose and things like that. But you know, the thing is with that, you can't really rely on these things too much, because you know they're sort of limiting. You have to be able to give your figure's life through the drawing. Okay, there's no way I could just take any of these pictures of these figures here and just make those into a painting. It would look like they would look like dolls. Okay, and you don't want that. So let's go back here to this. That's the light basic flesh. That's pretty much what I start with. It's a little lighter. I think I need something just a touch lighter still. put that in right along the edges here. Actually, I need to turn the pencils off just a little bit so I can kind of see what I'm doing. And that way you can too. There we go. Actually, let's get a little bit of, let's take this and make it a little more red. And then I'm going to add a little bit of color right there. Now you can see here what I'm doing is I'm actually getting to the point where I'm not going to need the pencil drawing after a little bit. Now I haven't really gotten to the point where I'm completely on my, away from it yet, but it's coming. So let's go in and let's define that a little more. And put in a little bit of lights in the eyes there. That's a little brighter than the other. Let's pop a little black back in here, something close to it, behind. So you got an iris there. All right, let's go back to this. Okay, and I'll probably just need to put in a little more defining features and stuff. And for that, you can use I really don't like to use black at all when drawing figures. Okay, there. So a lot of times I'll go with dark brown, different shades of brown and stuff like that. Okay, so we got a lot of the basic stuff popped in here that we're going to need. It's still pretty rough. Okay, let me just put in a little gleam there, a little gleam there. Something like that. I'll probably wind up diluting those down a little bit, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment here. So let's go ahead and start blending some of this. Right over here, this is your mixer brush tool. If you hover over it long enough, it'll tell you what it is. Right now, it's really big, and I don't need anything quite that big. So let's take this down to a decent size. Let's see, 10. That's a little big yet. I'll just go ahead and punch in. Let's go with 7. See what that looks like. That'll probably work. All right. So now the mixer brush, what that does is it takes the colors that you have here and starts blending them around. I think what I'm going to do right now, I've got this white in there. I don't want to dilute my colors that much, so I'm going to pop back with this, sort of use this as a neutral color. That color is not really loaded so much in the brush. Well, it is, but you can see you can kind of push the color around. Make it a little more subtle, or not subtle, whatever the case may be, however you want to do it. So you're kind of pushing it one way and then the other. So if I want to add a little more light across here, I can do that. Or if I want to take the dark and spread that this way, I can do that as well. I can also take my highlights and make those not quite as obvious, and blend in some of these colors along here so it looks more natural. Don't get too quiet here when I'm working, but that's just how it goes. All right. I'm gonna have to probably play around with a little, putting a little more color through here. Make this a little bit darker. Let's blend this through here. Like I said, I'm going with a really obvious sort of color palette. Uh, so the so instead of using a lot of more realistic tones, I'm using a lot more of these darker shades through here. Trying to, like I said, give it that sort of feel that they have from these, you know, these cheesy paperbacks. At least that's sort of my goal. If you ever get a chance, you ought to Google Mexican paperback art, the 1960s and 70s. Wow, that stuff was crazy. A lot of fun though. Okay, so you can see here what I'm doing is I'm bringing in a lot of brush strokes and stuff. Um, Minimizing some parts, bringing other parts forward. I pop back over to this for a second. Let's go a little bit darker still. Actually, let's just go with this color right here. I need to bring in this a little bit. And this here. All right. Back to the mixer brush. I'm going to go ahead and make this just a little bit bigger. Now, the thing is, too, one thing you can do is you can select a lot of different kinds of brushes. There are different sort of inking brushes, dry and wet media brushes, and they're all, nice to, for certain things. This is a wet blender right here, so it does stuff like that if you're not careful. Let's undo that. But if you want to go through and just try out some of the different tools that are in the toolbox, you can do that. Let's go back to our soft round brush. That's a little big. Just want to kind of blend in. Oh, that's a little too much. Blend some larger areas here. You have to be very careful, otherwise you wind up losing all the definition that you've created. It's kind of a little bit of a dance here, because if you're not careful, you wind up making this really airbrushy looking thing, which I don't want. I just want to blend some stuff and then go back in and add a little more in the way of, undo that, a little more in the way of brush strokes. Let's take that back down to 10, no, 7. 7's good, okay. Then now that some of the big stuff has been moved around a bit, I can go back in and do what I want. Have to be careful. I don't want to make it look too much like he's got a dent in the side of his head or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I should probably make this just darker through here. Actually, darker still. Bring that back just a little bit more. There too. All right. So I want to have my shadow core right along here. double check my, yeah, my shadow core right along here. And then what we'll wind up doing is sort of minimizing the effect of it. You'll notice too that I just switched out to the lighter shade for back here, even though this is the mixer brush. So I want to have a little bit of sort of reflective light going on. Switch it back to this and start blending some of this stuff through here. Okay, back to this. Blend this through here. One thing you want to keep in mind too when you're working on this sort of thing is where your visibility is at. Okay, right now, or your magnification level is at. Right now, my magnification level is actually really zoomed in at 200%, which is bigger than a lot of people like to work. A lot of people like to work at just 100%. I like to get in there and get all the detail that I can when I can. Makes it look just that much better when you're zoomed out, I think. There. A little more shading there. And I think I'm going to go in here a little closer up and let's see. Let's go yeah, right about there. Excuse me. A little more color here. Actually, while I'm at it, I'll put a little right there, a little right there. And notice too, I am not using black. Okay, hardly at all. I am using a lot of different colors to try and suggest darker shades. Okay, but these are all dark browns, and that works pretty well. Get my gray back here, put in a little more touch there. Okay, let me zoom out. Hey, it's starting to look halfway decent. I need to play a little bit more with this forehead here. There's a little too much right through here. So let's go ahead and drop in some more of this mid color right through there. Like I said, it's kind of a dance. You gotta play around to get the effect that you want. Have it be kind of a natural look. Well, as natural as you want it to be. I'm not a realist by any leap of the imagination of a cartoonist, so I do what I want. No, I'm kidding. I have my own criteria, what I like and what I don't like. So we'll highlight there. Make sure the So I end up doing a lot of stuff with this mixer brush. I usually spend, I would say, most of my time when I'm doing these kind of works, switching between the two, the mixer brush and the regular brush. I like the fact that the mixer brush can give you a soft, sort of a soft line. On the edges. You can kind of go over different parts and soften some parts here and there. I've been studying the works of a guy named James Bama, who is a really, really fantastic artist. I think he's still around unless he died more recently. but he was a realist painting, and he had a whole paper on uh, where to put in soft edges and where to put in hard edges in your paintings. And and he was working primarily in oils. Back in like the this is a guy that was doing a lot of work, paperback book covers and magazine covers, and actually did stuff that's in the National Portrait Gallery, portraits of Robert F. Kennedy and stuff like that. Beautiful work. And so, the thing is, if you've taken painting classes, the stuff that you learn in your painting classes, that stuff still applies, even though we're doing digital painting. Okay, so just because we're working digitally here doesn't mean things are completely different. Okay, a lot of the stuff still applies. What you've been taught about complementary colors and all that sort of thing. Yeah, it's all very, very much the same stuff we're talking about here. Okay, so I have to go back in and I first learned to paint using oils. This was ages ago. Though I have to say, my first oil painting wasn't until, well, I didn't do an oil painting until I was 35 years old, I think. So if you're younger than that, then you're ahead of me. Now, what I'm adding right now is I'm adding a little bit of texture. Okay, and I'm putting in color and then using the mixer brush to kind of move stuff along, just so there's a little bit more going on there. Okay, a lot of this is just by feel. You just kind of, oh, maybe this needs a little more of something right here. Lighten that up a little bit. That looks all right. Let me put it back on. Load this in here so I can kind of move that back in and spread this around just a touch and move that out that way. I think I might need a little bit more of something right there. Again, I'm just going to take some of that red that I have right there and just kind of move it down just a touch. And like I said, that's what you can do. Once you get used to using this mixer brush, you just kind of move stuff around. Okay. Now, one thing I'm probably going to have to do, I think, is take a little bit of this purple here. This might or might not work. I can always run back through in my history palette if I don't like what it does. But I'm going to put a little bit of a sort of an opposite color in here. If you've taken color theory, you know about this. This is all very much white along here on these highlights. This is kind of orange over here. So I'm going to go ahead and put in, needs to be darker, kind of a little bit of a purple back here. Just to kind of give it that lurid sort of glow. And then just kind of blend that just a touch. Again, this is, whoops, undo a couple of those. Right about there. Okay. That might be a little on the bright side. I'm not sure. That's one of my highlight colors. So. Now I'm putting a little more texture along here. And then back to this, a little more along in here. And building it up and out. Moving it around a little bit. slowly kind of darkening that up just a touch. Let's go ahead and lighten that just a little bit. Right there too. There. A little too lurid. I had to kind of walk that back just a touch. Let's actually, I'm just going to use my regular paintbrush right through here. And then let's take that that purple there again and just give a little bit on this side right here. Again, this is just there. That might be a little bit too much. So let's try that. Just having to make a little correction here. I got a little too heavy-handed, which happens sometimes. It's easy to do. So I'm using lighter and darker colors to kind of define my edges. Now you don't have to use the mixer brush for everything. If you want to put in some sharper edges back again, like I'm doing right here, you can do that too. Little spots where I got a little too involved with the mixing brush. It's easy to get stuff to be just a little bit too much. Okay, that I kind of like. I just need a little bit. Whoops. Down here, maybe a little bit of that. Just a touch of that kind of thing. Backside there. Okay, I'm kind of digging that. That is starting to come together a little bit. So let's go back in here. Let's grab some more of this other color here. We'll add that to some of the highlights along here. Maybe along there too. And then we'll go ahead and let's just use the darker shade right there. Our mixer brush and just kind of soften it up a little bit. Make it a little bit smaller. Blend it with the brown just a touch. Okay. One thing I want to warn you about when you're using the mixer brush, though, is if you go off where you have paint and you're on a light palette, you're gonna wind up having some weird stuff show up. Okay, so it might make what looks like a dark mark or something like that. So you wanna be just aware of that. Okay, I'm gonna put in a few more details along here. I just loaded that up with black. This is my regular brush. I'm gonna put basically some darker colors along in here. So we have a little bit more of a defined area that is recessed. Okay, you'll notice too that I don't have quite all of the all this drawn in down here. I need to take care of that. Also filling in some spots where I might have missed a little bit. And I want to do that with my regular paintbrush before I go in with my mixer brush, so I don't have anything weird happen. So I'm getting some real depth here. Minimize this one a little bit here. Okay, that's working all right. Now let's go ahead and do that instead. Now I don't know that I'm necessarily going to use white for any of the highlights on the hair. Probably not. I think it'd be a little too much. So going with the purple seems to be working okay. It gives it kind of that Unreal sort of feeling. Expand that down there. It's dark, so it's not going to be a problem. Let's go ahead and putting in a little bit of stuff. That's the collar right there. All I have to do is just kind of move some paint around to kind of define the edges and make it look more finished. It's still a little on the blurry side, but that's okay. For the really defined areas, what I'll probably wind up doing is popping in some white or something like that. A little touch of that purple in there along here as well. And then we'll go ahead and use our mixer brush. Now let's go with the brown. Blend that a little bit too, so it looks a little more natural. I think one thing I might need to do, let's get our flesh down here. Let's kind of straighten that a little bit, give that a little more of a defined thing. One thing I think I might need to do here, light side, shadow side, boom, boom. That is lighter, this is a little darker. I'm going to make this a touch darker still, just by putting in some basic tone here. You want to have a definite light side and shadow side. So the lightest area on this side of the face is still going to be darker than this side. Okay. That's an old drawing one trick. Now I just need to blend this a little bit. I got too heavy-handed with it. All right. Let's go back in and fix that a little bit. That was a little heavy-handed as well. Matter of fact, I think we might need to make sure it doesn't look like he's wearing eyeshadow. So let's get our regular brush here. Put this along here. Yeah, that was way too much. And that's the thing too. Just like any other sort of a painting project, it's always a good idea to sometimes walk away from it for a little bit. You get really into something, and you can feel something's not right. Oops. You can always just take a little break, walk away from it, and then when you come back to it, a lot of times you'll look at it with fresh eyes, and the problem that you were having before that you couldn't put your finger on, the answer to it will seem pretty obvious. I have that happen quite a bit. I'll have some sort of thing going on. I'm like, oh, why does this not look right? And yeah, that's a lot more subtle. Almost a little too much so. There. Let's go with that and that. All right, I went a little too far with peeling it back a notch. Might as well define that while I'm at it a little bit too. Grab our mixer brush. Whoops. Got to have a lighter tone going on in there when we go into mix it. And let's go ahead. I need to define this lid just a little bit better. This one too, actually. That'll be the highlight spot there. The highlight spot here. We'll use that right along there. Then there, that works a lot better. Oops, didn't like that. There we go. Now the thing is, too, when you're working on something like this, you don't have anything look too perfect. You want to have it still look like a piece of artwork. At least I do, anyway. So, leaving little quirky bits is there's nothing wrong with that. Go a little bit lighter. So I'm putting in a little bit more in the way of highlights, but you'll notice this is darker than this over here. Okay, touch over here. Really trying to bring out, give it some depth. Touch back there. Back in here, let's define the nostril area. There we go. Just adding a little more definition as we go. Just tapping, just touching. Also, let's go ahead and make this a really defined berm area. Berm is the indentation right beneath the septum. And then we'll just kind of blend that just a touch so it feels a little more natural. We're also gonna, you notice I was bringing in a little bit of definition into that beneath the mouth, the chin area. Right, let's little better. All right, let's zoom out a little bit. All right, that's starting to look pretty cool. Okay. Let's see. We are at 50 minutes. Wow, that's a lot. Okay. I'm going to keep working on this thing, and I will probably, I'll probably, cue you guys in a little bit later on as to how it's coming along. Notice too, what I'm doing. I'm zooming out here to see how it looks at full size. Sometimes you have to do that to get an idea of what things are looking like. I can see right now that I'm going to need to put in a little more shadow core along here. This is a little heavy right up here and not enough down here. See, and that's what happens if you're working too closely with something. So I'll go ahead and work on that. This is probably going to be a bit darker through here, and I will catch up with you guys later on.